It's strange, isn't it, how life piles up? Not just years, but things, emotions, regrets, all accumulating in the basement of your being. That's where I found myself, literally, in the basement of our old house. After Charlie passed. 64 years. 64 years, and it felt like I was finally allowed to breathe. And yet, each breath was laced with a kind of ache. Not just grief for Charlie, bless his soul, but an older ache, one I hadn't dared name for decades. Dust motes danced in the weak basement light, just like memories in my mind, swirling, indistinct, yet stubbornly present. The air was damp and smelled faintly of earth and forgotten things. I was sorting through boxes, Charlie's things. Mostly, but also remnants of our life together. A life that felt both long and fleeting, substantial and strangely empty. Let me be honest, and this is hard to say, even now confessing to you, whoever you are in my mind's eye. My life with Charlie was good, solid, reliable, like an old oak tree. But passion, desire, that wildfire kind of love, it was a whisper, almost from the start. We married young, sensible. Everyone said we were a good match. And we were, in a way. We built a life, a home, a family. But somewhere along the line, I got lost. Not lost in a dramatic runaway kind of way. More like faded. Like a favorite. Dress left too long in the sun, the color bleached out, the vibrancy gone. I'd pushed down so much of myself, those yearnings, those needs. I'd tucked them away like old photographs in a dusty album, telling myself it was enough to be a good wife, a good mother. And it was, for a long time. Or so I thought. Cleaning that basement, surrounded by the ghosts of our shared past, it all felt heavy. Each box I opened was a chapter of that past, and each object within was a sentence, a word, sometimes just a single sharp letter, reminding me of things left unsaid, undone. Charlie's old fishing rods, gathering cobwebs. In the corner, they spoke of weekends spent at the lake, quiet companionship, but also a silent distance between us. His worn leather armchair in the dim light looked like a tired old man, just like how I felt sometimes, tired of playing a role, tired of being sensible Amelia. And then, amidst the boxes and the shadows, came the knock, on the door that changed everything, or maybe just woke something up that had been sleeping for far too long. Troy, my step-grandson, all grown up, standing on my doorstep like a sudden burst of sunshine in that dim, dusty basement of my life. Troy. Even his name felt young, vibrant. He wasn't a boy anymore, not the teenager I vaguely remembered from family gatherings years ago. He was a man, 27 he told me, with kind eyes and a smile that, it just lit up my porch. He'd come to help, he said, knowing I was alone, wanting to see if I needed anything. Such a thoughtful young man. I invited him in, of course, and offered him coffee, still feeling slightly dazed by the sudden interruption to my solitary sorting. He followed me down to the basement, and even in that gloomy space, he seemed to bring light with him. He wasn't awkward or pitying, just present. Interested. He asked about Charlie, genuinely and respectfully, and we talked for a while, surrounded by those boxes of memories. It was easier to talk about Charlie with Troy than it had been with some of our closer friends, maybe because he wasn't part of our shared history. He was fresh, untainted by the weight of it all. Then he noticed the photo album. It was old, leather-bound, the pages yellowed and brittle. "Can we look at this?" he asked, his voice gentle, curious. And just like that, we were sitting on the dusty floor side by side, leafing through my life. There I was, young Amelia, beaming in my wedding dress, Charlie looking proud and handsome beside me. "You were beautiful, Grandma Amelia," Troy said softly, and a strange warmth bloomed in my chest. No one had called me beautiful in, well, decades, it felt like. We turned the pages, through family holidays, children's birthdays, anniversaries. Each photo was a tiny window into a past I thought I knew so well, but looking at it through Troy's eyes, it felt different. He asked questions about my work as a nurse, about raising the kids, about my hobbies. Things Charlie had never really shown much interest in. He saw me, young Amelia, the one hidden beneath layers of years and expectations. I pointed out a picture of myself in my 20s, hiking in the mountains, my hair windblown, my cheeks flushed, a look of pure joy on my face. "That's you?" Troy asked, a hint of surprise in his voice. "You look free." Free. The word resonated, echoing the ache I'd been feeling. I had been free once, carefree, adventurous, full of dreams that had somehow withered, like flowers without water. As we turned more pages, Troy's admiration, unspoken but palpable, began to feel like sunlight on those withered flowers. His eyes lingered on my face in each photograph, and then, inevitably, on my face now, sitting beside him in that dusty basement. And in his gaze, I saw not pity, not politeness, but something else. Something that made my heart flutter, something that stirred a warmth deep within me, a feeling I thought had long been extinguished. It was unsettling, exhilarating, and utterly, terrifyingly alive. That dusty basement suddenly didn't feel so gloomy anymore. Over the next few weeks, Troy kept coming back. He said he was genuinely enjoying helping me sort through things, but we both knew, it was more than that. We'd work for a bit, surrounded by the relics of my past, but then we'd find ourselves talking, really talking, about our lives, our dreams, our fears. He told me about his work as a musician, his struggles and his passions. I told him about nursing, the joys and the heartbreaks, things I'd never shared with Charlie, things that suddenly felt important to voice to someone. He listened intently, his eyes never leaving mine, and I felt heard, seen, valued, not just as Grandma Amelia, but as Amelia, the woman I'd almost forgotten I was. Laughter came easily between us. A lightness I hadn't felt in years filled the house when he was around. We'd order takeout, eat on the porch swing, watch the sunset, and talk until the stars came out. He made me feel young again, not in a silly, delusional way, but in a way that reminded me I was still alive, still capable of joy, of connection, of desire. That word, desire, started to flicker in my mind, unbidden, insistent. It was like a tiny flame in the darkness of my long-dormant emotions, growing stronger with each shared smile, each lingering glance, each moment of easy intimacy. One evening, we were looking through more photos, this time in the living room, the soft lamplight casting warm shadows around us. We found a picture of Charlie and me dancing at a wedding years ago. "Did you and Grandpa Charlie dance a lot?" Troy asked. I hesitated. "Not really," I admitted. Charlie wasn't much of a dancer. Troy smiled, a mischievous glint in his eyes. "Well, then you've been missing out." And before I could protest, he took my hand, gently pulled me to my feet, and started to sway to some music playing softly on the radio. It was slow, romantic music, and as he held me, just lightly, leading me in a simple two-step, I felt a shiver run down my spine. His hand in mine was warm, strong, his gaze intense. We weren't just dancing, we were communicating in a language that transcended words. In that moment, surrounded by the ghosts of my past life, holding hands with this young man, my step-grandson, I knew I was walking a dangerous path, and yet I couldn't bring myself to step away. The flame of desire had grown too strong, too insistent. The darkness was receding, and I was drawn, willingly, toward the light, no matter where it might lead. The basement, the symbol of my buried past, felt miles away. I was rising, drawn upwards, toward something unknown, but undeniably, intoxicatingly alive. The climax wasn't an explosion, more like a slow, simmering heat that finally reached a boiling point. It was a rainy afternoon. Troy had come over, as he often did, and we were sitting in the living room, ostensibly sorting through more boxes. But the boxes were forgotten, pushed to the side. The rain pattered against the windows, creating a cozy intimacy within the house, a sense of being sealed off from the outside world. We were talking about music, his passion, and he was explaining a song he was working on, something about longing and lost love. His voice was low and earnest, and his eyes, they held a depth that belied his young age. He leaned closer to show me something on his phone, and his arm brushed against mine. A jolt, electric and undeniable, shot through me. I pulled back, slightly, a nervous laugh escaping my lips. He looked at me, his expression unreadable for a moment, and then slowly, deliberately, he reached out and took my hand again. This time, I didn't pull away. His hand was warm and calloused against my softer skin. He intertwined his fingers with mine, and the simple gesture sent a wave of dizziness through me. We sat there, hand in hand, in silence, the rain drumming, a rhythm against the windows. The air was thick with unspoken emotions, with a tension that was both terrifying and thrilling. Then he spoke, his voice barely a whisper. "Amelia," he said, my name sounding different, unfamiliar, yet somehow right, on his lips. I feel something for you." The words hung in the air, heavy with meaning. My heart pounded in my chest, a frantic drumbeat against my ribs. I looked at him, really looked at him, at the desire in his eyes, the vulnerability, the raw emotion. At that moment, something inside me broke. Years of restraint, of denial, of playing the dutiful wife, the sensible grandmother. It all shattered. I was Amelia, just Amelia, a woman who had desires, needs, and longings that had been suppressed for far too long. And in front of me was a man, this young man who saw me, who wanted me, who awakened something in me I thought was dead. The air crackled between us. I knew deep down this was wrong. Everything told me to pull away. But I couldn't. If you're wondering if I gave in to this forbidden desire and want to witness the moment everything changed, subscribe now. Because what happens next is something I've never confessed before, not even to myself until now. Without thinking, without planning, driven by a force I couldn't control, I leaned in and kissed him. It was hesitant at first, a tentative brush of lips, and then, as if a dam had broken, it deepened, became urgent, desperate. His arms went around me, pulling me closer, and the world narrowed down to just the two of us, the rain outside and the overwhelming sensation of his lips on mine. Guilt, confusion, shame. They were all there, swirling around the edges of my mind, but they were drowned out by something stronger, something primal, something that felt like life. In that kiss, in that embrace, I wasn't just Amelia, the widow, the grandmother. I was a woman desired, a woman awakened. And in that moment, in all its messy, complicated, and morally ambiguous glory, I felt alive. Truly, vibrantly, terrifyingly alive. The basement was forgotten, the past faded. There was only the present, this moment, this forbidden, exhilarating connection. What happened after? It's hard to put into words. It wasn't a fairy tale ending, no grand declarations of love, no easy answers. It was messy, complicated, and fraught with conflicting emotions. The guilt was immense, a heavy weight in my stomach, a constant whisper in my ear, reminding me of Charlie, of propriety, of everything I'd been taught to believe. And yet, intertwined with the guilt was this liberation, this sense of having finally broken free from the confines of my own making. I had stepped outside the lines of my life, crossed a boundary I never thought I would, and in doing so, I had discovered a part of myself I thought was lost forever. The days that followed were a blur of intense emotions. Joy and fear, desire, and shame, connection, and confusion. Troy and I, we talked, we struggled, we tried to make sense of something that defied easy explanation. There were tears, whispered confessions, moments of intense closeness, and moments of agonizing distance. We both knew it couldn't last, not in the conventional sense. The age difference, the step-grandson dynamic, the moral implications, they were all insurmountable obstacles. But what we had found, that spark of connection, that awakening, that was real. And it had changed me, irrevocably. In the end, Troy moved away for work, he said, and we both knew it was also for other reasons. We didn't say goodbye in a grand, dramatic fashion. Just a quiet hug, a lingering look, and a promise to remember. And I do remember. Every day. Not just the intimate moments, but the laughter, the conversations, the feeling of being seen, truly seen, for the first time in decades. It was an infidelity, yes, in the strictest sense of the word. But it was also a rebirth, an awakening. It forced me to confront my past, to acknowledge my suppressed desires and realize that life, even at 64, is not over. It can still surprise you, challenge you, and offer unexpected paths to self-discovery. Cleaning out that basement initially felt like confronting death, the death of my past life. But in a strange, unexpected way, it became a journey towards life. Troy's visit, that photo album, that forbidden connection, they were catalysts, leading me out of the shadows and into a new kind of light. The moral? Perhaps it's that life is too short for regrets, too precious to be lived half-heartedly. Perhaps it's that desire, in all its forms, is a powerful force, and denying it can be more damaging than embracing it, even when the path is uncertain and fraught with peril. Or maybe it's simply that even in the dusty basements of our lives, amidst the forgotten things and buried emotions, there is always the possibility of finding a spark of life, of connection, of awakening. And sometimes that spark is all it takes to change everything. And for me, it did. It truly, profoundly did. Thank you for listening to me. Did you like these infidelity stories? Drop a comment below if you want part 2. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications for more cheating wife stories.